Thank you so much for having us and having me. I'm Victor. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Scribble, and very happy to basically have a little time to share what we're doing with you all. We've built what really amounts to the most sort of advanced research and writing platform anybody's ever built. And I know that's a big statement, but I think when you see what it's capable of doing, we feel very comfortable making that big claim. And just a little bit of background, I started the company because I needed something like what we've built when I was a student in school. And increasingly over the years, we've worked with a lot of teachers and librarians and other kinds of educators and gotten a lot of feedback from them as well, so that we have built a lot of student and educator feedback into the platform. Some additional background, we've been a Google partner for many years. We are more recently also a Microsoft partner, and we've been backed by the National Science Foundation. So as an organization, we have some sort of great partnerships. We're about to add Wills as another great partnership to our list, and we're very excited about that. So the problem that we've been addressing is one that has been around for a long time and has frankly gotten harder to solve because of the pandemic, or it's been complicated by the pandemic, I guess I should say. And that problem is one that I think folks on this call would certainly know and appreciate, which is that about half the students in our country, when they're coming out of secondary school, struggle with research skills and they're not ready for college level writing. It's a pretty pervasive problem, one that starts as early as late elementary, but we tend to focus on it really in secondary. And in the work that we've done, we've really kind of dissected the workflow to try to understand why this work is so difficult and so hard for students and for educators. And one of the things that I'm sure you all know, just based on your experience and your work, is that when you think about something like research and writing, it is a historically very logistically complex type of a learning experience, right? There's a lot of different steps along the way, like the ones that you see here on the left-hand side of the slide, where students have to go through a number of things to be able to do the research, right? Curate their information sources, annotate them, cite them, et cetera. And then when they get into the writing process, they may be building outlines, and they've got to keep track of their work with their references for the bibliography and whatnot. And so it's a lot of different steps. And historically, students and educators have had to cobble together a bunch of different tools to do different parts of the workflow. So it could be different apps, or it could even be, in some places, still a lot of paper and physical note cards and things like that. So you might be using a standalone citation tool, a PDF organizer, a web clipper thing to grab research off the internet, and so forth. And so it leads to scattered work by the students. And from a teacher or librarian's perspective, it also becomes very hard to sort of teach and track students through this process, because all their work is sort of trapped in all these different data silos and different ways of working. And so at Scribble, what we've done is we've kind of brought that all together under one roof. We basically have built a number of capabilities into Scribble as sort of like a super app, so that we can help students curate, annotate, cite, build an outline, build a bibliography, and then basically we integrate with Google Docs and Microsoft Word so that you can easily bring your research into the writing process with the integrations that we've built there. And then for educators, librarians and teachers, we have a number of capabilities as well. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into all of these in great detail, but I will show you some screenshots to show you what the analytics piece looks like, particularly because that's one capability that I think really people sort of sit up and take notice, as it's giving you a lot of interesting information that you maybe haven't seen before as you're tracking students through the process. So that's kind of like the 30,000 foot level. What I wanted to do was basically drop down to, oops, actually forgot about this. Just wanted to close this slide by saying that, when you look at what we've built, it's really kind of the most fully integrated solution in this arena. And it's meant to save you all and students time. And the data that we're able to sort of generate and capture and surface in the analytics is meant to help provide a more personalized learning approach to research and writing, which historically, frankly, has not been very easy to do. And so that was 30,000 foot level. What I wanted to do now was basically drop down to sort of ground level and show you what it looks like with some screenshots and a voiceover for me, so you know kind of how the thing works. So we're going to basically start on the student side. I'm going to show you what it looks like as if I'm a student that's writing a paper about space exploration. So here I am. I'm doing my research. Maybe it's week 1 of a 3-week project, and I'm out on the web looking for interesting information. And I come across an article on the web that looks interesting, like the one that you see here. And as a student, I would click on the Scribble Chrome extension, which you see up here on the right-hand side. When I do that, 2 things happen. First, the article gets saved to my Scribble library in the cloud with 1 click, where it lives forever, even if the original goes offline. And then secondly, you can see here that once I've clicked on the Chrome extension, we load this toolbar on top of the page, which allows the student to then richly annotate the article right on the page. So they can highlight passages that they might want to quote later in the paper. They can add comments in the comment sidebar to be thoughtful about the content that they're reading, and so forth. And if this is in fact a shared article, you'll see here that multiple people can reply to one another with comments in the margin, kind of like how you might be used to doing, in a Google Doc, where you can have like a whole discourse in the margin. So that's an ability to do that as well. And then, there's a number of other capabilities, but in this quick overview, I really like to emphasize, some important aspects of the research process. And one of those is, of course, that we actually embed citation capture early into the research process, and it's integrated right into the overall platform. So what you're seeing here is that in our citation sidebar, we have automatically extracted citation information directly from the article, and we've pre-filled a bunch of the fields down below that the student would need for properly formatted citation, which we render up top in real time, like you see up here. And so if the student, is making any edits or changes to any of the citation fields down below, as they're typing, they'll see the citation up top change in real time. So they see the impact of their work as they're doing it. And then I think when the screenshot was taken, it was set to, APA, but we actually usually default to MLA, and we basically support all the different citation styles out there. You can just sort of choose the one you need from the drop down here. All the work the student's doing here, whether they're highlighting or adding comments or whatnot, it's all getting auto saved as they go. So it's like Google Docs in the sense that you don't have to worry much about losing a lot of work in case the bandwidth chokes or the browser crashes. And you can get to the stuff that's been saved by clicking on this little library button in the toolbar, or you can go to our site at scribble.com and sign in with your credentials, and then we'll bring you into your library, which looks kind of like this. Actually, it looks a little bit different now because we've made some changes, but the basic idea is that the library is a place where you can see all the research that you've saved. So here you're seeing, for example, different sources of information that you've saved, but it's also a place where you can do some downstream work, which we'll talk about in a minute or two. But in terms of the information that's been saved, what you can see here is that this is an example of a web page that was captured with the Chrome extension while I was doing research on the internet. You can also import bookmarks from your browser. But I want to be clear that we're not just about web content. So we have actually built a cloud-based PDF viewer and annotator that's baked right into the system. And so let's say that you are on the open web and you come across a PDF that just renders normally, in Chrome. If when you're looking at that PDF in the browser, you click on our Chrome extension, we'll actually transfer that PDF to our viewer, we'll save it to your library, and it's ready to annotate all with one click. And so it's super sort of seamless in terms of helping you quickly curate and annotate PDFs while you're doing research. Now, if you are a district that uses a lot of Chromebooks, or a school that uses a lot of Chromebooks, one of the nice things about that is that while students are in research mode, Chromebooks are not meant to have a lot of local storage. So you don't have to download files and then upload them to our system later. While the students in research mode, they can literally just keep clicking on the Chrome extension, and it'll seamlessly sort of transfer that from the open web directly into their library without ever having to make a pit stop on their desktop, where, again, on a Chromebook, you typically don't have a lot of space. Now, if you are a district that's using Microsoft devices, or if you are not using Chromebooks personally, maybe you're a teacher or a librarian and you've got a Mac or a PC, we do actually allow you to drag and drop files from your desktop into your Scribble library in the browser, and then we upload them and they live alongside all the other information you've curated using the Chrome extension. So bottom line is multiple ways of getting information in. It's not just about web content. And then whatever you've got in your library, you can see here that you can use tags to organize them, kind of like using labels in Gmail. You can also rely on full text search, because we full text index all the content in the library to make it fully keyword searchable. So you can do a simple keyword search like you would do in Gmail, for example, and we will go and show you a set of search results that shows where that word appears in any of the articles that you've added to your library. In terms of downstream work, once you've got your research, we have a number of capabilities that I probably won't have time to go into in much depth here, but I wanted to just point out that we have a bibliography editor that's built right under the bibliography tab here. And that would allow you to quickly generate a works cited page in a couple clicks really quickly and easily. We also have an outline editor where you can literally drag and drop notes and highlights into a dynamic outline interface. And it auto numbers things and remembers the indenting and the Roman numeraling, if that's a word, and all that kind of stuff. But I think the most important thing about the outline editor is that whenever you add a piece of evidence into your outline, because we know where it came from, since we helped you originally curate, annotate, and cite it, we're able to automatically update your bibliography in the background. So that's kind of magical, where things are kind of happening as a byproduct of the work that you're doing. And then under the Papers tab, we actually embed the Google Docs viewer if you are using Google Docs, or I think a link to the Word Online doc, so that from a student's perspective, all of my research and writing is in one place. I got my sources, I got my annotations, I got my bibliography, my outline, and my papers right here as well. And so it becomes sort of a one-stop shop in terms of staying organized, which has been particularly difficult for a lot of students and educators during the pandemic, not being able to be in one place to kind of point out where things are. The last thing I'll say on this slide is that this is one library for this particular paper or project. But if we were actually in the app and I was able to click on this little tab here on the left-hand side, you'd see a list slide out of all the different libraries that I have access to. So I might have one for my English paper, one for my National History Day project, another for my Science Fair project, another for a social studies paper. So you can have multiple libraries with different names and sets of tags, and you can invite people to those libraries to make them collaborative if you want. And then you can decide what permissions to give them, whether you want to kind of give them the ability to add things to that library, make it read only, etc. And so it's a really powerful collaboration space to be able to work with other people on curating, organizing, commenting, etc. on third-party content, basically articles. And then once you've done your research, oops, I think I skipped an important piece. Well, we'll just move along here. We also have the Google Docs and the Microsoft Word integrations. And I think I kind of forgot to include that slide here. But it's pretty powerful stuff. And I think in the interest of time, I'll probably skip over it for now. But if I feel like there's a minute at the end, maybe I'll come back to it. But for now, let me just go on to the teacher side or the librarian side, where we're now no longer the student. Now we're actually the educator that's working with a class of students, maybe on an assignment. And so this is an example of what that analytics dashboard looks like for an assignment. So let's say it's a social studies class and there's a paper that's been assigned. If I am the teacher or the librarian that can co-teach on that assignment, I can see, basically at a classroom level, where everybody's at. I can see how many people are on target and off target for the different steps in the process. How many students have started the research or not, started the paper or not, or met certain goals, like having a certain number of words or citations in the paper, which are goals that I created as the teacher or as the librarian when I created the assignment in Scribble. And so really you get a quick lay of the land, but you also get to see where certain groups or sets of students might be struggling or falling behind. So if it's 3 days before the paper's due, and you can see that 5 of these students haven't even started the research yet, now you know really where to sort of focus your time and energy. We also have data at the individual student level. So we can show you, for example, in this assignment that Jordan here has collected 6 articles, met the first goal of having 5 cited sources in the paper, on our way to meeting the second goal of having 1,000 words in the paper. Susan here is a rock star because she's all in the green and she's already turned it in. And Kara here still has a lot of work left to do. All things that would be good to know sooner rather than later, so that you can help them course correct in case they're getting off track or if they're falling behind. And that's one of the things about this kind of work. I think when it comes to research papers and projects, they typically are lengthy. They're certainly, oftentimes at least multiple days, if not multiple weeks. And in some cases, when it comes to things like the IB extended essay, maybe multiple months. And so what we found is that if we can help empower you all with real-time data, it kind of gives you a better sense of, who to focus on, who needs help, where people are falling behind, and really trying to empower educators with the power of real-time data to help them make better decisions about how to spend their time and who to spend it with. And, before the pandemic, I've been in classrooms watching when teachers are working with students, and we used to see the classic way of assessing this work, which is, the teacher or the librarian would say, I'm going to spend 5 minutes with everybody to see where they're at and checking on their outline this week and maybe their rough draft next week or whatever. And we used to say, even before the pandemic, that wasn't necessarily the best use of time, because the reality is you might want to spend 10 minutes with Kara and 0 minutes with Susan, because Susan's doing just fine. But oftentimes you don't know that until you're already invested in that conversation, and you're never going to get that time back. And so one of the nice things about how we work is that we put the whole process online and make the students' work and the data around it available to you, so that you can do virtual check-ins from home or when you're not teaching during the day. And that really gives you a better ability to sort of hone in on the students that might need the most help and allocate your time accordingly. Now, during the pandemic, you don't have that luxury even of doing that 5-minute, one-on-one in-class, in-person check-in. So we've actually been filling a gap in the distance learning model. We've heard from folks that we work with that having Scribble has made it a lot easier to do something that was otherwise very logistically complicated and difficult, and historically involved a lot of face time with students in school. So if you are doing remote or hybrid, or if you're planning to do that next year, and hopefully we'll all have to do a lot less of it, but if you have to, Scribble is a platform that can help you do that kind of work in a much less time-consuming, less painful, more insightful way than cobbling together a bunch of different tools and trying to stumble through it, the way that it might have otherwise been done. And I'll just mention this, but I think there's maybe a slide on it later, that because we have been sort of acknowledged as a support for distance learning, we have been recognized as an eligible expense under the CARES Act. And so we've had the entire state of Utah actually signed on with us this year, and they use CARES Act funding to help basically fund their statewide partnership with us. The last thing I should have mentioned is that this last column is a little bit different. Everything else here is around kind of progress, if you will, and this is as well, but it's a little bit different in that it's about the content more than anything else. And the reason for that is that when students are saving information into Scribble, we're able to automatically bucket those into some major categories and show you kind of roughly the credibility and diversity of sources students are using. So if we were in the actual app and I hovered over these different pie slices, you'd see that 2 of Jordan's articles are coming from government websites, 2 are coming from academic websites, one's a Wikipedia article, which might be a no-no in terms of quoting from a credible source and so forth. So there's just some interesting information there that might help with media literacy. I think I'm going to be out of time pretty soon, so I just want to flip through a couple of things really quick before I sign off here. I mentioned earlier that we're partnered with Google and Microsoft. I think you've seen an example of some of these integrations, but I won't go through all of them. Just wanted to point out that we work really well with either ecosystem. We've also added a number of text accessibility and comprehension supports. So we have these capabilities like read aloud translations and definitions. And these are not new things in the world, but we get to combine them with the annotation stuff we've already built, which really provides some new and interesting experiences that people haven't seen before. We also integrate with all these things. So some of you may be using Clever, Schoology, ClassLink, Canvas. Just know that we are always innovating and kind of building into what people are using already. And that's been particularly helpful for some of the schools and districts we work with. I won't go through this really in detail. I'll just say that now that you see how the platform works, you can probably appreciate that in addition to using us for research and writing, a lot of people have been using our annotation platform for close reading and text analysis, even when there is no writing component associated with it. So I'll just kind of state that at a high level, and there's some specific rationale here that lays out why that is. Also, a lot of people tend to think of us naturally for humanities, but we also have folks using us in science. So sometimes that might look like what you would do with us in an English class where you're writing a paper, but sometimes you might be using us in a different way where you're helping students with a project that might be like a science fair project where there might not be a paper at the end of it, but they're going to do a lot of background informational research and organizing that stuff and maybe annotating it. So lots of different use cases on how you can get value out of Scribble. And then I guess sort of in conclusion, I wanted to say that here's some examples of schools and districts that we work with kind of in your part of the country. Sheboygan has been with us new this year, and they're planning to continue with us next year, which is really nice. And there's some other sort of interesting references here that might be useful to you all. I do have one thing I wanted to try to do very quickly. One of your own Will's members, Menominee Falls in Wisconsin, their high school just started with us, and we're very fortunate that we actually ended up getting their librarian, I believe it is, to kind of send us a short message to play for you during this webinar. And so it's about 30 seconds or so. I'm just going to sort of switch my screen here and see if I can play that for you. The dilemma is I've got my AirPod Pros in, so let me disconnect those. And I will hope that you can still hear me. And I will hope that you can hear Emily here as she tells you a little bit about the experience they've had with Scribble just in the last month.
Hi, I'm Emily Leonard, and I'm the Library Media Specialist at Menominee Falls High School. We recently began using Scribble, and so far we've used it in the English classes at all of the levels for their research projects. And so far we have been loving using Scribble. The teachers have remarked to me what a game changer it is for their research because it saves both them time and it saves so much time for their students. Students are easily able to annotate web pages and PDF documents in their Scribble libraries, where they can also create outlines and bibliographies and works cited. So Scribble's been a total game changer for our research process, and we are super excited to be using it.
All right, I think that's probably a good place for me to end. And just want to thank everybody for listening. We'd love to work with you. I'm going to drop my email into the chat, but you can just look us up at scribble.com. And we are just becoming a Wills partner, a Wills vendor partner. So there will be discounted pricing available through Wills for the paid versions of Scribble, but we also offer a free plan as well. So you can just go and sign up and start using us, and there's a free trial involved as well. But if you were interested in working with us either on our teacher plan or looking for a school subscription or something like that, then we'd be happy to help you with that. And if you are planning for next year, you can certainly look at sort of purchasing the paid version if you want through Wills, where you'll get a discounted price. I should also mention that we've been recognized as a Common School Fund eligible expense as well. So I think there's great opportunities to work with us on the paid side if that's something that you want to do, whether it's using Common School funds or CARES Act funding and working through Wills. So lots of great opportunities in Wisconsin to take advantage of what we've got.